What is happening there, citizens of the Reject Nation? We are going to watch some Screen Crush today. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Plot holes, questions answered. And Ryan Airy is going to go out of his way to do it. Joined by my co-host today, John. How are you?
I'm excited to fill in some plot holes. I came out with gripes.
Yeah, that's right. We had nothing but nitpicks over here at the Real Rejects.
Nancy's.
Hey guys, I was on the Screen Crush over the weekend. Actually, I was part of the Black Panther, Wakanda Forever review. You guys should go check that out. Defended this movie. That's what it ended up turning into. But yeah, leave a like. It'd be very much appreciated. Let's get to it.
I need to know if Wakanda is an ally or an enemy.
Hey there, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's
Hello,
talk about
Ryan.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever, specifically all the little things that didn't quite make sense in the movie. Now, we asked all of you to send us your plot holes on our community page and on my Twitter, and some of you had great questions, others of you just need to watch the movie, and some of you are just bad people. But now, let the fun begin.
True that, boy.
So let's start with where the movie started, at the funeral. At Your Ugly Clone asked, why didn't a single Avenger attend the funeral? Not even his best friend Clint Barton, who he met at the airport that one time.
I'm Clint.
I don't care.
Now, this is a pretty good point, and a few of you also asked why Bucky was not there, since he had such a strong connection to Wakanda. Well, Wakanda was an isolationist country for thousands of years with their own sacred rituals. They just now opened themselves up to the world. It could be they believe that a Wakandan funeral is a sacred ritual that sends a person off to the realm of the dead. And Ryan Coogler even said that the funeral is actually a celebration, and in the movie, they actually sing thanks for the gift to T'Challa. So an outsider's worldly viewpoint might have tarnished the ceremony in some way. Also, maybe there was another service for outsiders. Maybe there were Avengers at the funeral, but we just didn't see them on camera. But I doubt it. The only Avenger that T'Challa actually seemed close to was Steve Rogers, and now he's on the moon.
Who are you? Captain America. I thought Captain America was on the moon.
There's also Bucky, but remember, he's not on good terms with his old friends in Wakanda.
It would be prudent to make yourself scarce in Wakanda for the time being, White Wolf.
But mostly, there were no Avengers at the funeral because if there were, we would have expected them to help out later in the movie, and it would have taken the focus off the Wakandans.
This got brought up in our live stream, and my main reasoning for why is it, I think just from the fact that this movie was so focused on its emotional context, ultimately feel like any appearance from any Avenger would have just distracted from the main emotion at heart. I mean, unless you're one of the viewers who is watching this really sad opening, and this is so tragic. Where are the Avengers?
They are callous, uncaring people.
Distracting me.
He helped them
They're
so
not
many
there.
times and they don't care. I think it's a great point that he brings up, that maybe there could be a different opportunity for them to grieve. But moreover, I think you're absolutely right. It's like any one face or presence. I feel like it's important to keep the aura and the spirit of this movie inside of Wakanda.
Brandon Red asks why the Queen questions Nakia's absence from the funeral when she actually knew the reason that she wasn't there. Spoiler alert, she knew that T'Challa and Nakia had a son. So, she did not approve of her grandchild not being brought to Wakanda for his dad's funeral. I mean, the answer seems pretty obvious to me. We also had a lot of questions about T'Challa Jr., Namor, and Talokan that I'm going to talk about in just a bit. First, all of you had lots of questions about Shuri. When Ramonda arrives home from the UN, she tells Shuri how uncomfortable the AI makes her and talks about how she's afraid of a rogue AI wiping them all out. Henry H. on Twitter asked why Shuri just dismissed this rogue AI question when Ultron nearly destroyed the world just a few years earlier. And not for nothing, that event made the Wakandans step from the shadows and sign the Sokovia Accords.
Yes.
Well, because Shuri is so brilliant, she would have understood how Ultron came to be. Ultron is not an ordinary AI. He was given sentience by the Mind Stone, and the Mind Stone no longer exists. So that means that an AI would no longer be a threat. All of the AIs that we have seen in the MCU are all very passive.
That's a great point.
Well, if I were her, I wouldn't be disappointed at all.
Thanks, Karen.
As always, a great pleasure watching you work.
What do I look like?
I don't know. I've been picturing a redhead.
You must be thinking of someone else.
That's actually a really solid way to explain it, because yeah, every time I watch the movie, I've thought like, what about Ultron?
Yeah.
What about Ultron? Maybe it was a fault on the screenwriters for just not bothering to remember Ultron, but yeah, especially with the visuals you back up with here. Solid points all around.
No magic to put those strings on you.
SquareBear77 asked why Shuri was trying to make another heart-shaped herb to save him from this illness when he already had the heart-shaped herb in his blood. I kind of think this one's self-explanatory. The herb has healing properties, concentrated healing properties, kind of like the super soldier serum. Remember, the serum also did cure Steve's asthma. See, the herb in T'Challa's system was not strong enough to cure his illness, but Shuri could have used another herb to create a potent medicine that would have fixed him. We also had a lot of you questioning Shuri's skills as a Black Panther. Mott Awesome says Shuri can't fight and never
here we
trained,
go.
yet is more agile and acrobatic than T'Challa and Daredevil combined during the final fight. Now, for one thing, I love how she moved during this fight. She actually moved more like a cat than the other Black Panthers that we've seen, and it's more reflective of her fighting style. Shuri isn't as strong as T'Challa or as Killmonger, but she is lighter and faster. Now, as for how she learned how to fight, come on, guys. In the first movie, she drops off Ross, then she goes to fight Killmonger, but on the way, she stops to put on her ceremonial combat face paint. You don't have ceremonial combat face paint unless you've been trained to fight.
That's what I thought too. I feel like it's been a big question on people's minds, but I'm like, I imagine if you're part of the warrior camp at all, even though she was leaning into her strengths in the first movie with weaponry, that she probably has some type of combat training, which is only just further enhanced by having the Black Panther skill set now imbued throughout her whole system, you know?
Yeah, this seems like a place where you would grow up just knowing how to take care of yourself in a fight. And if you look at her and Ramonda on the shore there when Namor shows up, they're both ready to go. Like, you know, they have to have a baseline, especially if they're royalty, you would imagine.
Yeah, I never really found it much of a plot hole, but a lot of people did question it.
In this movie, we learned that T'Challa was a scientist as well as a warrior, and the reverse is true for Shuri. Shuri learned how to fight, but she focused more on her lab work. The opposite of how T'Challa chose to live his life. Also, guys, she fought Killmonger. She fought Corvus Glaive. She fought in the final battle in Endgame. She fought Thanos. Have you ever fought Thanos? I have not. So there. Another Shuri question here from Tony Stanton. How did Shuri learn how to fight, and how was she able to defeat Namor, a die-hard warrior who's been around for centuries? Well, Tony, she defeated Namor by trapping him in a ship.
Yeah, she
outsmarted him.
She weakened him.
If it weren't for that, she would not have stood a chance. And a couple people mentioned that Shuri has a gaping hole in her stomach at the end of the movie that should have killed her. Well, I mean, I'll let her explain it.
Bullet wounds don't just magically heal overnight.
They do here.
Even when Ross was first shot, T'Challa shoved a Komodo bead in the hole to stabilize him, and I'm sure that Shuri just did the same for herself. And we also had lots of questions about Riri Williams, and rightly so. Riri is one of the few elements of the movie that you could remove and the plot wouldn't even suffer that much. But she did help Shuri out of her grief by giving her a friend who was untouched by the tragedy of T'Challa's death. Sasha Space asks, how was Riri able to create a location device for vibranium if she had never seen it? Wouldn't she need at least a small sample of it to create that sort of machine? How can you locate something you've never seen or touched? Yeah, like I've never seen a girl. Well, I don't think that she would have needed to have seen or touched vibranium.
Girl detector.
If she knew the molecular structure of vibranium, then she would be able to craft a formula and a device that, in theory, could attract metal. Remember, her professor dismissed the idea and then sold the plans to the government himself, so Riri was pleasantly surprised to hear that it even worked. Groovatron 3
it's a solid ass
why Namor was so intent on killing Riri. She already built the machine, the government already has and knows how to make the tech. Killing her would accomplish nothing. So I believe they say in the movie that this machine is their only one and that they didn't
like Bell says that.
Yeah, the professor didn't sell the plans to the machine, he sold the actual machine. It's also likely that the government couldn't reverse engineer the machine because it was cobbled together from so many parts that Riri found. Kind of like how Richard Pryor designed a supercomputer and cigarette packages in Superman 3. Kind of like that, yes. Now I know that explanation is maybe
Justice
a
for
little bit lazy,
Superman
but
3.
It's what they say in the movie.
I think that they definitely could have if you have a whole team of scientists, I think you could have reverse engineered.
They're not so incompetent in this world, and I mean, she's not so astronomically brilliant. That alien tech exists on Earth, like people can bridge the gaps.
Yeah.
At Elo K asked, the U.S. aren't going to kidnap and force Williams to build another the moment she arrives home. They might. That might be what the Ironheart show is about. When Riri leaves Wakanda, Shuri says that she took care of her problems with the police. But this is probably just talking about the agents that were pursuing Shuri and Okoye. Now, I think a lot of this is going to play out in a later movie, with the government trying to destabilize Wakanda and like tricking Riri into helping them.
Couldn't have worked better if I'd planned it myself. Oh, well, maybe I did.
Zoe Peace even says, not really a plot hole, but a question. Who was the professor that sold the machine in the first place to the CIA? That seems like who everyone really should have been going after. Riri even said that she just made the machine to prove them wrong and said that they must have sold it. They could have added a name drop as a second post-credit scene. I'm just saying. I don't care. I don't care who the professor was. Some jerkwad. If he was worth naming, then he would have been the one who invented the detector.
And it was who Peter Parker talked to.
Suddenly drops his quest to capture Riri. After all, the reason he approached Ramonda and Shuri to begin with was to force them to bring Riri to him. At least, that's That's what he told them. What Namor actually wanted was for Wakanda to acknowledge the power of Talokan. Once they did that, then the Wakandans would want to see him as an ally, and then they can invade the surface world together.
Namor made that pretty
saw
clear.
Riri as an innocent in all this, someone who was harmless and who could potentially help his people. He even tells Shuri that after they're done with the surface world, Riri can go home. That damn Kez asks, why didn't Namor just kidnap and kill Riri when he sent the water in the throne room? Again, because he didn't actually care about Riri. He just didn't want her to make a vibranium detector for the government. Once she was in Wakanda, he knew that she would be safe from the USA, so he didn't care. Also, and this is, by the way, far more likely, Riri was unconscious when Namor told Shuri to bury her dead. So Namor likely thought that he killed both her and Ramonda. But remember, his goal was to force Wakanda into being an ally, and he would have let Riri live if that was the cost of doing business. A few people asked what Ramonda was going to tell Shuri about T'Challa before she died. She was going to tell Shuri that T'Challa had a son.
Yeah, I have a question. Why were there so many women in this movie?
I have a question. Why do you care? These are characters that have been built up over several movies who had real emotional stakes, and your first thought is, where's the boys?
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. And now we have all grown emotionally.
Yeah, high five. No Deep
For maturity.
Says, I don't think they addressed who was really in Wakanda during the Endgame time skip. More of a minor issue, but one I know that most fans are curious about. Look, I'm pretty sure it was Ramonda, but you're right. They don't mention it. She was definitely alive during the blip because she references Nakia being gone for 6 years. And she would only say that if she were around for those 6 years.
Yeah, we could fill in the gap on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Has it never occurred to Thanos or his minions to cross the sea to enter Wakanda and take the Mind Stone from Vision? How is it possible that Namor and friends managed to arrive in Wakanda without problems? Doesn't the Wakandan barrier go underwater? Okay. That's a couple questions, and they're both really good. Thanos and his minions didn't use water to arrive in Wakanda for a couple of reasons. One, they can't breathe underwater and probably aren't used to doing amphibious assaults. They're from space. Two, they're arrogant and would have rolled over every single world they'd ever encountered. They would have assumed that a little mud ball like Earth would not have been able to mount a defense against them.
Not a great plan.
As for the Wakandan barrier going underwater, when Ramonda's ship passes through the shield early in the movie, it does look like the gate pierces the water, but we also see these guards have to hit a particular water drum to open it. My guess is that the Talakans swam through some sort of underground waterway and then disabled this shield. After all, we do see ground swells of water erupting throughout the Golden City, showing that they did have command of the city's water supply. It's also possible that maybe, like Andy Dufresne, they crawled through the sewers to come out clean on the other side. Once they had circumvented the barrier, a couple of their forces disabled the shield using this water drum, and then the main force could sneak in through the river.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, I didn't even question that at all. Just like they clearly own the water.
Yeah.
And Wakanda's surrounded by water everywhere. That of course they could just find a way around.
And I could be mistaken, but I feel like at one point one of the Talokanil says something about the depths, or maybe it's Namor says something about the depths of like how deep they had to swim to like get in here or something like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know, open up one of those hexagons.
Now, a few of you asked why they couldn't recast T'Challa, and you know, I was back and forth on this because for me, T'Challa is a concept. He's a comic book character that will live forever. But in practice, in the movies, that isn't true. He is Chadwick Boseman, at least for now. Now, if Boseman would have left the role because of a contract dispute, then fine, he would have been recast. But the way he passed, and so suddenly and so young, if you had cast another actor, there just would have been endless comparisons to Chadwick, calling the casting tasteless. Also, I happen to know that there's a little T'Challa on the way, so we'll have a Black Panther named T'Challa at some point in the future, but more on him later.
Yeah, and I also just feel like it probably wouldn't have been as much of a genuine experience for everyone involved with making the film, actors and crew, but mainly like the actors especially probably.
I could see it coming out more strained, honestly.
Yeah.
Everyone having to like corral together as if this just didn't happen.
I think that regardless, it would have been an endless comparison. That version sounds more of a distraction than anything
100%, because anything short of like a breathtakingly great performance is still not going to skip the conversation, but like, you know, anything short of perfection was going to get compared and probably dogged on anyway, and that's like a thankless job for any actor to jump into.
It's not like with Doctor Who where you're like, it's a new doctor, it's a new, but part of it is that they're a new person. Like, you wouldn't be acknowledging that this person's new. They'd have to continue to be.
They create a whole new weird Ed Norton, Mark Ruffalo situation for them to have to deal with, but more painful.
And I feel like we came out with a movie that's really unique in the end, too.
Yeah, and Wakanda had their backs against the wall the whole movie.
Yeah. It's called good storytelling. If the Wakandans would have won all the time, then it would have been boring, like House of Cards. David Riley said the biggest
Take
plot
that,
hole is the
Kevin
title.
Spacey.
Batman Forever did have a focus on that. Yeah.
That's good. It was meant to be.
Let's move on to all the questions we had about the Talakans. Call Taishan asks, so you mean to tell me that the Talakans from the jump have an audible hypnotic device that works on all who first hear it, but the movie isn't automatically over yet, and all it takes is for someone to shake it and disrupt it, for them to never use it again, and to just choose to start actually use it close-up fighting instead? Okay, it was a hard one to read. First of all, they don't have an audible hypnotic device. They have the power to sing and attract people into the sea. I actually really love this new power of theirs because it ties into mythology of the sirens calling sailors into the sea, like Odysseus. But this is a power that they cannot use all the time because they can't breathe above water for very long. And you're right, in the end they do get hit with Wakandan sonic cannons that disrupt their abilities. And the Wakandans came into this last fight prepared. When the Talakans attacked Wakanda, Io put a sonic dampener in her ear, which I'm sure that
They first started using it when they showed up
in the final battle, so the hypnotic sonic power would not have been effective. Also, the ship that they're on is very high up, meaning that the siren sounds probably aren't as strong. And like I said, they don't use their power when they're fighting in close quarters because they wouldn't be able to breathe and they would be vulnerable. It's also possible that using the power is directly tied to them being within the ocean.
Maybe the cannon's a different frequency.
David Edwin Colestone says, blue out of water and normal neutral skin tones in the deep ocean? How? I understand it's a suspended reality, but I think I needed more on the world building of Talokan.
What is wrong with you? Why are you blue?
All right, so I'm glad you noticed this. I noticed it too, but because I'm a little bit colorblind, I just assumed it was me. But a couple of users have also had good responses to this. Clouded Sky 88 says, doesn't that have to do with the reflection of light on the surfaces? And the angle defines the color of light, so because the light doesn't break through, it's blue underwater. Now, it is true that objects appear to be different colors when they're viewed in different environments and different types of light. It's that blue and gold dress thing all over again. Blue, they are the other. See, blue skin was also used by the artist Siona Benjamin to illustrate a form of otherness that she felt in her own life as an Indian Jew living in America. Michael Walton says, sure, you can't get to a water place without wearing a suit because the pressure will crush her bones. And yet, she escapes the water place on the back of an underwater sub with no suit. Because, my friend, she needed the suit to go down into the depths and see the actual city of Talokan. She was much closer to the surface in Asinote when she left with Nakia. And this one says, so Nakia could just so conveniently not only know exactly where the underwater Talokan pod would be whenever she jumped into the ocean. It was a Wakandan underwater pod. She knew where it was because she brought
guys,
tracking down people that
she
lived
brought
underwater,
that.
so she brought her own pod. And this person also asked how she was able to sneak past the guards.
They don't need
The
a
answer
pod.
is, she's a war dog, a spy, and a badass. Another person asked, the Blues were stabbed and sliced to death on the bridge fight, but got up and jumped back in the water early in the movie. But the one Blue gets shot and dies? No explanation, I suppose. I mean, look, this one took a close-range hit from a Wakandan blaster, like right in the lung. The Talakans on the bridge did not get hit in as critical a spot or with as deadly of a weapon. I don't think you need an explanation for this, like it's all in the movie.
Then why didn't they have those weapons on the finale fight?
That's a good
That's
point.
where my mind went to.
That's a good point. And also that spear is made of vibranium, which is pretty damn powerful on the bridge there.
And Nakia has that weapon. All of them should have had that weapon and just bam, bam, bam. Yeah.
Alpha Talking says, the Talakans seem to heal from nearly every death early in the film, only to drop like flies in the obligatory MCU group battle at the end. Why? For nothing. The Wakandans were pretty much better prepared to fight than them. They fought in their turf, but for another, they kicked the crap out of the Wakandans and then had them covered when they called off the war. Now, we also had a few questions about the final fight, like why the Wakandans fought the Talakans on a boat couldn't have set the trap for Namor. Now, a lot of people also thought how it was messed up, how they killed like 90% of Wakanda's forces, but then they just declare a truce. All right, well, look. First of all, we don't know that they killed 90% of their forces, just the forces on the boat. I'm sure they left their home country very well defended. And second of all, it's not like either side wanted this fight. They wanted peace the entire time. And also, Wakanda is a nation of warriors who accept that people die in combat.
Then it will be the noblest ending in history.
I mean, look how fast they got over their massive civil war. And somebody else asks, why would Namor care about a long-term war if they just killed most of Wakanda's elite forces? Because, brother, it's still Wakanda. They still have tech and more armies and probably allies all over the surface world. A lot of people mention that no one in the movie ever mentions or makes reference to a giant-ass celestial sticking out of the ocean.
Yeah, no one ever does.
Yes, fair.
She-Hulk
But
did.
remember, in the Eternals, there is a public explanation for Tiamat's existence.
The appearance of an enormous stone figure in the Indian Ocean has left more questions than answers for authorities.
People don't realize that it's a space god. They think that it's just a rock formation that looks like a space god. And this was also acknowledged in She-Hulk in a news article. Also, Talokan is located just off the coast of Mexico, and Tiamat rose out of the sea in the Indian Ocean. Unlike in the comics, Namor doesn't claim to rule over the entire ocean, just this one city. Although, you know what, they have been around for hundreds of years, so some of them might have splintered off and founded colonies all over the planet.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Namor, there's some line in there about how he won't move again or something like that.
Yeah,
Like, so this is not the first spot and the only spot Talokan has remained. It sounds like they've migrated before.
You would think, unless he just meant down from the beach, but it certainly felt like there was history there that we maybe haven't seen yet.
There were lots of questions about Namor. One thing, because Aquaman came out just 4 years ago, and another King of Atlantis would have seemed like just a repeat of that same concept. Instead, they changed him in a way that perfectly fit the story that Ryan Coogler wanted to tell. A hireable Drew says, how did Namor get into Wakanda? How did the whales get into Wakanda? Why did the Queen know about baby T'Challa?
How did the whales get to
Shuri?
Boston?
Well, I'm pretty sure she knew about Shuri, but as for the Queen not knowing about the baby, look, Shuri was blipped and Ramonda wasn't. So Ramonda would have been around when Nakia gave birth. Now, as for your other question, we talked earlier about how the Talakans could have gotten into Wakanda, but even if they swam through the sewers, we do see the whales carrying them through fresh water into the river. Well, it could be that the shield does not extend underwater, or that they disabled the shield by using water concussion grenades to destroy the controls. As for the whale, believe it or not, orca whales have been seen in freshwater rivers all around the world, such as the Thames, the Rhine, and one whale even swam up the River Tay in Dundee, Scotland. Hell,
That's
Steve
cool.
even mentioned seeing whales in the Hudson.
You know, I saw a pod of whales when I was coming over the bridge.
In the Hudson?
It's fewer ships, cleaner water.
Most whales can survive in freshwater for limited times because, as mammals, they actually breathe air on the surface. But this is the reason why the Talakans didn't bring sharks. Sharks cannot survive in fresh water. Or remember, the Talakans can control water. Namor has to activate the jet stream that takes Shuri to the Talokan capital. And when the Wakandans first attack, we see water bursting through a wall that could have been some sort of dam. So it's possible that they just pushed all the underground water under Wakanda upwards, which broke through their barriers. A lot of people asked why Namor did not fight in Endgame. Well, for one thing, he had no idea what the hell was going on. Half of Talokan disappears. Hell, he might have even disappeared. Why would he have gone to the surface to fight in a battle with people he had no idea existed?
Whole point is to hide.
Joe Expansion asks, how did Namor get all the political updates off the surface? He knew a lot about recent events. He did know a lot about recent events, especially those concerning Wakanda, the other nation in the world that has vibranium. Remember,
we get Wi-Fi
people
here.
on the surface world who Namor has had contact with. Nakia even questions one of them. I think it's likely that Namor does visit the surface disguised and learns about potential threats to his people. And after Wakanda revealed itself to be another powerful civilization with a large store of vibranium, he would have started paying very close attention to the outside world.
He does also seem to have some type of super hearing, like when he says he overhears Shuri speaking about burning the world.
Yeah.
He must have been underwater at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So he could probably just lurk and not even have to talk to anybody.
Yeah, he just happened to be around a television that was playing the news while he was in the
just
water.
Pop up by a TV or a your local newsstand, and you got everything you need.
LA284 asks, not really a plot hole, but why doesn't Namor wear a camelback or bring a water bottle or something? His kryptonite was basically a frickin' dehumidifier. All right, look, I don't think Namor had any idea this was his weakness. This was his first time fighting the surface world in hundreds of years, so he always approached them on his terms.
And he's of both worlds,
It's a little
too.
lame that they basically gave him the same weakness as Aquaman in the comics, that he just always needs to be near the ocean. Melissa D asks how his hair dries out so quickly. Well, look, he was inside of a giant hair dryer, and also his skin dries out fast. That's why he needs to be near water, so I assume that his hair dries that fast as well. Crystal of the City asks, I think I saw that one of Namor's rings was ripped off. Are there consequences or repercussions from that? Or was it just that some of the feathers got ripped off and not the whole thing?
G-spot.
It is bandaged up at the end of the movie, so I do think that it grows back. And remember, this broken wing is what prevented him from flying away from Shuri when she had him pinned down. Okay, here's another one. Namor gives away a sacred relic of Talokan to a total stranger, and that same relic ultimately is the key to restoring their rival's greatest protector. All right, so for one thing, he had no idea that Shuri could use the fibers of the bracelet to synthesize the heart-shaped herb and make herself the Black Panther. The Talakans don't have that kind of advanced tech that Wakandans do, so Namor could have never dreamed that would happen. But for another thing, this was part of Namor's plan. He did not want to invade Wakanda. If he did want to take over Wakanda, he just would have finished the job. He wanted to show Wakanda that he was strong and make them an ally. But he also gave Shuri this gift as a diplomatic measure to make sure that she would find a way to sympathize with his people. And it worked. The movie ends with Shuri seeing the Talakans as just like the Wakandans, and with Namor recognizing his mother's own innocence in Shuri.
I mean, yeah, I think that was like, I think especially in terms of the emotional symbolic meaning that Ryan was just pointing out, like when he is dying and after Shuri sees Angela Bassett in the ancestral plane, he looks up and sees his mom. I feel like that was probably always a subconscious association, seeing the likeness of his mom or the innocence or whatever it may be within her as well. So I feel like that's why he also felt he could bargain with her, whereas, you know, Ramona doesn't quite have that type of welcoming presence.
Yeah, it's like it makes sense as a gesture and it makes sense thematically.
Trinity's dad asks, not a plot hole, but the Talokan headdress with the feathers that are waterproof and stay pristine even after coming out of the water. So are these feathers from what bird? Or are they feathers at all? All right, look, Trinity's dad, this is really nitpicking. Namor probably goes to the surface, kills a bird, plucks the feathers, and then I would imagine hands those feathers off to some artisans who can make his crown. They probably pick birds that are
laminate the feathers
and partially aquatic so the feathers can stand up to the salt water. When the salt water does start to erode those feathers, he goes back to the surface to get another bird. I actually really hope there is
very specific question.
Namor doing all of this, so you can get a sense for how boring it would have been to see this play out in the movie. Not Mephisto says no bubbles when Namor speaks underwater. Nope, because he breathes through his skin like amphibians. And finally, we had quite a few questions about the ending. Number one, who's king? Look, I don't think that M'Baku challenging at the end was a gag. I think he literally wants the throne.
But he and Shuri became close friends.
Yes, like I said in our Ending Explained video, I think he is taking the throne though at her request, so she can focus on being Black Panther because she is not yet ready to rule Wakanda. Now, this could cause political problems in the future, which I'm going to talk about in another video really soon this week. A lot of people also had questions about T'Challa Jr., like why they wanted him raised away from Wakanda. Well, consider the timeline here. If T'Challa and Nakia hooked up and had the baby within a year of the first movie, then this is right after a civil war ripped the country in two. It's also a very vulnerable time for their nation as they have revealed themselves to the world. So the son of a king, the heir to the throne, could be exploited by other political factions like Killmonger's supporters. They could have, say, assassinated T'Challa and then kept the boy. But that's a pessimistic view of things. Another way of looking at it is that the kid was going to be a bridge to the outside world. Nakia and T'Challa wanted Wakanda to understand the outside world so they could place somebody with an outsider's viewpoint on the throne. Also, you know, it's a lot like Harry Potter. The kid would be so famous in his own world, so to keep him level-headed, they raise him in more humble surroundings where he's not famous.
I actually haven't heard that yet. That's a great reasoning.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Harry Potter analogy. But
you're a wizard, T'Challa.
The whole idea of where it ended off with Black Panther 1, so that way you have both a respect and reverence for the outside world as opposed to viewing it as a thing you gotta isolate yourself from, which is obviously something Wakanda still struggles with welcoming in. So if you have that kind of person there, who eventually does come back to Wakanda, they would be able to help bridge a gap.
Yeah, and also coming from a place like Haiti, which has had, you know, pretty significant traumatic, you know, events happen to it in recent years. You know, this would be somebody who not only knows a more normal way of life, but also like the true needs of people out there and people not very much unlike the people of Wakanda. So it makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Namdo says, in your Ending Explained video, you talked about time dilation and bringing someone to space to make them age faster. I think they grow slower, not faster. Think of Pixar's Buzz Lightyear movie. All right, so in our Ending Explained video, I mentioned how they could age up Prince T'Challa by sending him into space, where time would pass faster and he would return in his teens or something like that. So look, time dilation.
Why would he go to space?
Gravity and the theory of relativity. Basically, the higher a planet's gravity, the slower time passes, like in Interstellar.
It's time. The gravity on that planet will slow our clock compared to Earth's drastically.
But it can work in the reverse way if he went to a planet with lighter gravity. That would also kind of make his muscles soft and weak, but whatever. No one in movies travels through space like it would actually happen in real life. Except in For All Mankind, the best show on TV. And finally, will T'Challa's son become a Young Avenger? If you're a friend of this channel, you know that we talk about the Young Avengers a lot. They have been set up in multiple shows like WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Loki, Multiverse of Madness, Ms. Marvel, Quantumania, you get it. And in the comics, in an alternate universe, T'Challa did have a son named Azari, who also was a teen Avenger. But for the MCU, I'm gonna say no. His son has no powers, he's in grade school, and if he is in the next movie, I think it would be as more of a political tool. But we want to know what you think of all this. Let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe or smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Ryan Airy, you're the man.
Well done.
You're the man, Ryan Airy.
Good.
Oh, yeah, it does answer some pretty thought-provoking things. Thank you, Ryan. Hey, killing it as always, and you're a great person. Ryan's a great person. I know him well in real life. He's a great guy. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and let's end this with a Patreon. Flev Doran. Flev, now my man. I heard in our live stream that you did not really care for this movie all that much. I'm sorry, that's soul crushing because, you know, like we're sharing a Marvel video because Marvel's always been your jam and the thing that you always really love the most. So to hear that you don't really love this movie,
it's the plot hole I want answered.
It's breaking my heart to let you know. But you have been a patron of ours for 35 months, it would appear. So I want to say,
3 years.
and I'm just looking at your profile pic now. You have this great hybrid of like Real Rejects logo and Psych combined because you love watching Psych with John on our Patreon. So I want to say thank you for being like this. Look at this extra TLC you give as a supporter. You even include a Real Rejects logo as part of your profile pic. It is so nice to have someone like you at our page. Even if we don't see eye to eye on certain things, I want you to know, always respect your opinion, always respect you as a person. So much love to you, brother, because you're an amazing guy. And we both really appreciate your support immensely.
Love you, buddy.